Do you remember a few years ago when it seemed like veganism was on an unstoppable rise? We saw headline after headline about new vegan product launches and increasing participation in Veganuary, and it seemed like veganism was finally breaking into the mainstream. After years of steady progress, veganism was finally on the rise, and it felt like we had made it. The mood in the vegan movement was up here. It pains me to say this, but in the last couple of years, that momentum has unmistakably faltered. Sales of plant-based alternatives are down from their pandemic peak. There's some worrying survey data on change in dietary trends, and it seems like more vegan restaurants are closing their doors in the last couple of years. In this video, I'm going to give vegans a reality check, look at what went wrong, and most importantly, look at what we can do to fight back. Okay, this first part is going to be a bitter pill to swallow. There was a period where the number of vegetarians, pescatarians and vegans in the UK was growing at a rapid rate. In the UK, there was a 31% increase in the number of people following a meat-free diet between 2019 and 2024. The number of people following a vegan diet increased by a huge 262% during the same period. We were at the stage where 1 in 6 people in the UK was following a meat-free diet. And this is significant because there's reason to believe that at 1 in 4 people following a meat-free diet, there's a significant social tipping point reached. And after that, widespread adoption becomes much more likely. When I looked at this same data for 2025, there was a pretty alarming drop. There was a 26% drop in the number of people following a meat-free diet. That's now more like just 1 in 8, and a 55% drop in the number of people following a vegan diet in just 1 year. Now look, this is based on a survey of 2,000 people, there is going to be some margin of error here, but this is a significant drop. Pair this with UK retail data showing a decline in sales of plant-based food since 2021, and a spate of headlines about vegan restaurants closing down, and it's easy to get the impression that the mood in the vegan movement is now down here. So, what went wrong for veganism? In many ways, the vegan movement was a victim of its own success. For many years, when the number of vegans was relatively stable and meat consumption was stable or even rising, the meat industry didn't see the vegan movement as any threat, and they didn't feel the need to spend any resources trying to slow down the vegan movement or defend their market. But when that rate of veganism started to tick upwards, vegan products started to proliferate in the supermarkets, and the meat industry in the UK saw a decade where per capita meat consumption was down 17%. They had to fight back. And they have fought back. Hard. This is an information war, and there are several key fronts where vegans have a really strong position, but the meat industry has done a strong job of putting up a smokescreen to disguise their weak position. There is a giant coordinated effort to discredit plant-based meats as unhealthy, even though they're not, to promote beef farming as sustainable, even though it's not, and to imply that animal products are necessary for good health, even though they're not. Let's look at some examples of this. How about this study from Imperial College London that was covered in all of the UK newspapers last summer? Vegan fake meats cause heart disease. Except that's not what the study found. When you look at the study in detail, plant-based meats accounted for 1/5 of 1% of calories consumed. They got to this conclusion by grouping plant-based meats together with other processed plant foods, including pastries and vodka, in a study which has been roundly criticised as misleading. But the pro-meat media were so desperate to jump on this anti-vegan headline that the New York Post actually had to correct their headline, while the Daily Mail and Telegraph still have incorrect headlines up. Then how about the Dublin Declaration, an industry document which purports to defend current livestock numbers on the basis of human health and the environment. In fact, it does no such thing. It was cynically formulated by meat industry executives to mislead policymakers. It contains lines like, animal source foods are a source of essential nutrients, not claiming that animal source foods are an essential source of nutrients, which of course they're not. It says livestock can contribute ecosystem services. It doesn't give an estimate of how many in fact do, and over 90% do not. You get the picture. Take this document to enough policymakers and they are managing to fool some of them into thinking that there's no need to reduce our meat consumption in developed countries, which is exactly the point of the document. Then how about this recent AHDB report, which contained this ridiculous table claiming to show that there's no convincing evidence of a link between red meat and heart disease? To be fair to the AHDB, they seem to have replicated these errors from another paper, and when I reached out and pointed out the mistake, they have now removed the paper and removed the misleading claim. Of course there is convincing evidence of a link between red meat and heart disease. So the meat industry are fighting dirty in the information war. Is this anything new? Well, yes and no. On the one hand, there certainly is a long history of dubious meat industry funded science, and of course there is plenty of misleading marketing of animal products too. But this time is different. The meat industry had a real wake-up call that they were losing the information war and it was starting to hurt their bottom line. And for the last few years they've been putting increasingly more and sophisticated resources into trying to win back their market. And it seems to be working. The National Cattlemen's Beef Association funded a digital command center in Denver, Colorado. The center is staffed 24 hours a day and monitors media activity on over 200 topics related to beef. A recent expose revealed how a PR firm called Red Flag bullied critical scientists into silence so that they would stop speaking against meat production. They knowingly pay influencers to give dangerous nutritional misinformation to young men. As a vegan, it's easy to look at this and think, damn, they just have an overwhelming amount of resources and power and money and it's just impossible for us to fight back. And that's exactly what they want us to think. That is part of the strategy here. They don't care when this stuff leaks, they probably leak it because they know that it demoralizes people on our side to find out about their digital command center. It's just people on Twitter. But it has demoralized us. That feeling of regression in the past few years is palpable. Make no mistake about it, we have lost ground in the information war in the past few years, and that is a result of our opponents in the factory farming industry pouring a bunch of resources into the information war. But they don't have infinite resources to pour into this war, and that is key to how we fight back. We have a secret weapon that their side will never have. We actually care. Here are 3 facts about the economics on each side of this information war. Number 1, let's be honest, their side currently has a lot more resources in the information war than our side. We hear a lot about the intimidating sums of money that the animal industries can pour into their campaigns to reach the public and policymakers. Number 2, pouring resources into these campaigns makes meat more expensive. The people staffing that 24-hour digital command center in Denver, Colorado aren't doing it for free. They have to fund them by increasing the price of meat to consumers, which is already unacceptably high to most people. By forcing them to defend themselves to such an extent, we are imposing a massive ongoing cost on them, and that is going to drive up the price of meat. Meanwhile, plant-based alternatives get cheaper and cheaper. The more resources they have to spend defending themselves, the easier it will be for plant-based alternatives to eventually undercut meat. Number 3. We have vast reserves of untapped resources which we can deploy in this information war without the same price penalty on vegan products. In terms of external resources that we can bring into this information war, the animal movement has the animal industries beaten badly, and that can only happen because our side actually cares. This is not some fluffy rhetorical flourish about passion guiding the way or something like that. No, I'm talking about cold, hard economic facts here. Adding fuel to this war on their side pushes up the price of meat, but adding fuel to the war on our side doesn't push up the price of vegan products. That level of moral conviction of people in the animal movement will be the key to determining whether we win or lose this war. There are thousands of vegans who are already pouring thousands of dollars of their own money and hundreds of hours of their own time into projects to help animals. And there are likely hundreds of thousands more vegans who would be willing to add their resources to this war if they had a structured way of doing so. More on that later. The same dynamic is just not true on the other side. There are some paid shills who put out misinformation for the meat industry, as well as some useful idiots who spread that misinformation for free, But in general, nobody is sacrificing their own time and money to the goal of increasing the number of animals on factory farms. There are efforts to increase the number of animals on factory farms, but that's only really happening to the extent that they're funding those efforts by levies on meat sales. The attempts to reduce the number of animals on factory farms, that's happening to the extent that you all are engaged in this. There are people who work in those animal charities and it's their job to help these animals, but there are only as many of them as can be funded through our donations. Make no mistake about it, the amount of resources in time and money that we as animal advocates collectively pour into this effort, the more we can push up the number of vegans and push down the number of animals on factory farms. The missing ingredient here is structure, and I'm working on a way to solve this. This is a prototype of an app that I'm building that will allow you to calculate, track, and compare with others the number of animals that you have saved. You can do this by recording your charitable donations, interactions with others, and time spent volunteering. It's not ready yet, but when I launch this, I want this to be a tool for vegans to be able to feel empowered that they can help animals. And they can. You're going to be recording in a systematic way, evidence-based things that you have done which are proven to help animals. Not only that, you're going to be able to help way more animals than your friends and family could possibly hurt by not being vegan. I'm not joking here, this is going to be an absolute game changer for your animal advocacy, and if it catches on, it could be an absolute game changer for the animal movement. If you want to increase the chance of this catching on and becoming huge for animals, like and share this video. If you want to know more about exactly what you can do to help animals now, go and watch my video Upgrade to Vegan 2.0, and if you want to stay in the loop about the release of this app, hit the subscribe button and go and find the link to the Discord server in the video description. This is Bryant PhD. Cheers.